Welcome to Series 8, Episode 1 of In Suspense, a podcast and vodcast for fans and writers of crime fiction. I'm Nikki Smith, and my co-host today is the wonderful Lauren North.
Hello, Nikki. Is that the first time you've done that introduction as well?
It is indeed. It is indeed. Very exciting.
All the viewers are like, oh, not that introduction again. It's all we ever hear.
yes. Well, it's nice for me to do it the first time anyway. And it's only actually been a few weeks since our Christmas episode, I think, but it feels like quite a few months have passed. And if you missed it, then do check out Busting the Myths of Digital Publishing, which we talked to Ruth Heald just before Christmas. So that was really good. And then on today's show, we have Jo Callaghan, the brilliant Jo Callaghan, joining us later to chat about her fantastic new book, which is called In the Blink of an Eye. I think it's behind me. And our topic today, which is artificial intelligence and writing. Should we be worried? But first, Happy New Year, I should say to you, Lauren. How exciting. Now we're in 2023. And what have you been up to?
Happy New Year, Nikki. It's flown by, hasn't it, Christmas, in that weird way where you don't know what day of the week it is. Yes, it was lovely, thank you. I did get my edits back from the independent editor that I'd hired for my next LC North book. So I've been working quite a lot over Christmas on them. And I've had quite a few people ask me this. So I'm just going to explain that the reason that I hired someone myself is because I normally send my book to my agent before it goes to my publisher. But my lovely agent went on a lovely holiday, a well-deserved holiday for December. So I, because my time is really tight because I'm juggling a lot, I thought, why not take the opportunity to get some completely fresh eyes? And it was brilliant. Her name, the editor's name is Bella Bosworth, and her notes were fantastic. They were so in-depth, and she's given me some real insight and things to think about. So it's been busy. It's been quite a big rewrite, but it's really brilliant. So do check out Bella Bosworth as an editor if you are looking for one. And what about you, Nikki? How was your Christmas break?
It was lovely, thank you very much. I had to get in the first draft of my book that is not actually out until 2024, but I wanted to get it into my editor before Christmas. So I've really tried to make the most of the break actually before my edits come back. I think maybe end of this month, beginning of February. Had first big family Christmas since COVID, which was really nice. My parents live in Devon, so I think there were 19 of us for Christmas Day, which was pretty big. And I've got two teenage daughters. One's revising for GCSE mocks, and the other one's going through kind of university applications. So that's all been pretty stressful all round. Yes, and then, but I did get some nice news, which was that The Beach Party was selected by the Daily Mail as one of their crime and thriller reads to devour in 2023, which was very unexpected, but absolutely wonderful. And I think that you had an equally lovely surprise as well.
Yes, I did. The Ugly Truth was in there as well. And it was funny because when you messaged me to say, oh, look, my book's in, I was like, oh, that's so good. And I was like, and then I had a little bit like, why is my book not in there? And then I actually looked and it was. So it was.
I followed up my messaging, so's yours. That's what I was messaging. Yeah.
And so is Louise Candlish's book, The Only Suspect, who we're speaking to very soon on the podcast. That's very exciting. So shall we talk AI and writing now?
Yes, great idea. So I think probably most listeners by now are aware of a recently developed piece of AI called ChatGPT, which apparently is a natural language processing model, and it's developed by a company called OpenAI, who I think Elon Musk actually owns.
What doesn't he own?
I know, tell me about it. I know, yes. And apparently it stands for Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And at the moment it's been released free for anybody to use, so you can just look it up online. You have to register for it, sign up and get an account, and then you can play around with it. And for anyone who hasn't used it, this AI is absolutely incredible. It can do the most amazing things. There's too many things to mention, but for example, you could put in a piece of computer code and it will find all the errors for you. You could paste in pages and pages of information and say summarize this in 10 bullet points, and it it will just do it for you. You can come up with weekly menus saying I want a certain number of calories or certain specific foods excluded, and it'll do that for you. It's just incredible. But obviously we were looking at it in terms of what it means for authors, Lauren, weren't we?
Yes.
Because one of the things that you can do is ask it to write your book for you. So you can give it a title, give it a genre, you can specify certain elements and a number of words, and off it will go and write the entire book for you.
Yes, and it's so fascinating. And in fact, we thought we'd do a little test. So I gave the instructions to ChatGPT, that very catchy name, to write the opening of a thriller novel set in a woodland scene at sunset with two teenage girls. And I then also wrote an opening paragraph too. So I'm going to read them both now. And Nikki and those at home playing along can guess which is mine and which is the AI. Now, I've got them here if you're watching. I've cut them up and folded them. So I couldn't tell you which one I'm going to read first. So there's going to be no like bias going on. So I'm opening up the first one. Okay. Here goes. This is story one.
Story one. Okay.
The sun was just starting to set as the two teenage girls made their way through the dense woodland. They had been hiking all day, trying to reach the clearing where they had planned to camp for the night. As they trudged through the underbush, the girls couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every rustle in the bushes, every crack of a twig underfoot seemed to send their nerves on edge. "Do you think we're lost?" whispered the tallest girl, Rachel, as she scanned the trees around them. "No way," replied her friend, Katie, shaking her head firmly. "I've got the map right here. We just need to keep heading northwest." But as they turned to continue on their way, they were startled by a loud crashing sound behind them. They spun around, heart racing, to see a figure emerging from the bushes. Right, so that's the first one.
Okay.
Opening up the second one now. So this is number two. Okay. Rachel froze, her hand grabbing Katie's arm. Another twig snapped behind them. "Did you hear that?" Rachel's words were barely a whisper, but Katie nodded, a furtive jerk of her head before Katie pulled in her lower lip and bit down. The movement was as familiar to Rachel as her own face, bringing flashbacks of exam halls and ticking clocks. "Let's keep going. I'm sure the cottage is just up here." Rachel glanced behind them, peering into the dusky evening. It was only 4 p.m. and it was already dark among the thick bushy trees. Were they even on the path anymore? Rachel ran through the directions in her head for the 100th time. Walk through the woods for 500 meters, take a right until the path opening into the clearing, and then a left along the river until they come to the cottage. That's what Jenny had said in her text yesterday. A surprise, she'd called it. A last hurrah before uni and their lives began, or so it seemed. Right, so they're the two stories.
Now, if I get this wrong, we might have to re-record this, I think. When
I wrote mine, I was like, oh, it's going to be so obvious which is which. And now I just read them, I'm like, oh, I don't know if it is as obvious as I thought.
Okay, well, I reckon you wrote the second one.
That is correct. I did write the second one. And Nikki does have a slight bias because she does read loads of my work. But I think...
it's not bad, though.
It was good. I really did think it was good. I think to me, it felt a bit like... because I obviously do quite a lot of mentoring and supporting authors, and to me it felt like someone who completely understood what they were doing but needed some more work on just how they portrayed the characters and the information. So the biggest example was whispered the tallest girl, Rachel. Now I just think you could do a bit of a better way of describing how she is. So
Absolutely.
That was kind of like my thoughts. But yeah, I mean, really good.
Yes, I mean, not, it's kind of better than you think it would be, if you think I don't think it's as good yet as an author can write, but it's definitely not bad. As you say, it's like a kind of very, very, very early draft kind of thing of somebody who hasn't written maybe very much before or whatever, but give it not that much time probably, and it's going to be really interesting to see where it goes.
And I think that we're obviously people who are trying to be the best that we can be as authors, and I do think that we operate in that world, and that there are I've read quite a lot of books in as time's gone by, of like just on my Kindle, just grab some 99p book without really thinking about it. And it's been quite poorly written, probably even more poorly written than that one.
Yes,
And I do think that people could just literally go and put details into chat GBT,
yes,
whack it on Amazon for 99p and have a book. But I mean, we all know it's so hard to market a book, so I mean, I don't know if that's possible.
Yes, it would be interesting to see as well what it's like over a longer period of writing. Because like when you put it into a short period, you know, a little short piece like that, it's probably not so bad. But if you actually had to go through a book and have like the character development and things, whether it's capable of doing anything like, you know, kind of
and the dialogue,
no, exactly.
I agree with that. And I read an article that was written by AI a couple of years ago now, that was very much like, this is what I'm capable of doing, don't be scared of me. And I enjoyed the article and I thought it was really well written, but I also thought, gosh, you're really rambling. So I do think that there is some work to go, but yeah, it's fascinating and also quite scary. And I do worry about my job, and you know, as do I think audio book narrators at the moment, having
absolutely.
You sent me that. Do you want to explain what you
sent me? I was reading I think something in I think it was out of the bookseller that that Apple audio books have started to hire AI as readers, so they're not hiring actual people to read your books anymore. That's not all books, this is just some books that they've started with, but obviously if they've started and it's successful, then it'll be really interesting to see where that goes, and obviously it's going to put a lot of people out of a job, which is not so good.
Yeah, it certainly can do. I think my only positive to come from it is that I've written a couple of romances that have not had an audio deal and are not in audio, and I think, well, actually, wouldn't it be lovely for my books to be in audio? So that would be a way for me to go, I guess. So yeah, I'm cautiously saying I don't want to put people out of a job, but there are loads of books, hundreds of thousands of books, which were written a long time ago that haven't been put into Audible, that people are missing out on, I guess. So yeah, I think there's a balance though, isn't there? And it's a slippery slope. So yeah, scary slippery slope.
Interesting, very interesting. Yes.
So, but how about we introduce Jo now, and then we'll chat a bit more about how worried we should be.
Indeed. So good idea. Welcome, Jo Callaghan, to In Suspense.
Hello and welcome, Jo, to In Suspense. Thank you so much for joining us. And we've been so excited to have you on the show. But before we dive into our questions, I'm going to read your bio. Jo works full-time as a senior strategist, where she has carried out research into the future impact of AI and genomics on the workforce. After losing her husband to cancer in 2019, she started writing in the blink of an eye. She lives with her 2 children in the Midlands, where she's currently writing the second novel in the series. In the Blink of an Eye is published by Simon & Schuster, and it's out on the 19th of January. Is that correct?
It is.
Perfect.
10 days, I think. Yes.
Oh, and I absolutely loved your book, Jo. I laughed and I cried and I rooted for each of the characters throughout the book, and including Locke, who was the AI hologram. So I'll be recommending the book to everyone.
Oh, thank you.
So could I start by asking you to tell our listeners about the novel, please?
Thank you. Yes. It's about a woman called DCS Caprank, who is just returning to work after the death of her husband. So she's just returned to work, and she reluctantly agrees to take part in a pilot of an AI detective as part of an experiment. And she's initially really hostile to the idea of it because Caprank makes her decisions according to her gut. She's a very instinctive policewoman, whereas Locke, obviously programmed by algorithms and deep learning, is a machine and makes decisions very much according to logic. So there's an initial clash between these two and the different ways in which they make decisions. And they're both of their different approaches are tested out in these cold cases when two boys go missing, and then when the third case turns live, they're sort of thrown together even more. So I'm hoping it's sort of takes a sort of a traditional police procedure, but from a very different angle, not just in terms of the AI, but hopefully opens up questions about how we all make decisions and what it means to be human. And also what I've tried to do is show what it's like to be a woman in your late 40s, return to work, or when they're in a leadership position, you've actually also got a lot of emotional issues and baggage of your own to carry forward. So trying to show that more human, rounded side of so-called strong female leads.
Oh, you definitely did that.
Yes, yes, I absolutely adored your book, Jo. And I probably shouldn't say this, but police procedural novels aren't always a genre that I like to read. But although this is obviously about a policewoman and the police force and solving a crime, I thought your novel was just about so much more than that. As you say, it's definitely about kind of what it means to be human. I think ultimately. Which is, I think, why it just has so much praise everywhere and everyone's talking about it. It's absolutely fantastic. So, and it's such an original idea. How did you come up with it in the first place?
Well, in my day job, I was doing work on the impact of AI on the workforce. We can get particularly at the cancer workforce, actually. So it was sort of going around in my head in the background anyway, because this piece of work was taking months. And this is back in 2017, I think. And I'd already decided I wanted to write a crime novel and about a female detective, but I couldn't think of anything different. And then I was reading Dan Brown's Origin. And at the end of that, which if you've ever read it, there's a few scenes towards the end where he has an AI assistant, and it's just an earpiece. But this AI assistant helps him solve the sort of mystery towards the end. And I just thought, oh gosh, wouldn't that be fascinating if you had that in police? That could really help save such a lot of time. And I thought, well, and then when I Googled it, it was like, actually, there are people are piloting and thinking and talking about this in the real world of police. And the more I read about it, the more I became fascinated. And then I thought, well, someone's bound to have written that, It's such an obvious idea, isn't it? when you think about it, but nobody had. So I thought, oh gosh, I just had all these ideas, and the more I read about it, the more excited I got. And then unfortunately, that's when my husband became very ill. So I couldn't write it then. Put that on the back burner, and then it was just very shortly after he's died. Actually, I wrote it as a way to distract myself. So I'm sort of going mad, to be honest. Actually, so I wrote that first draft in 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It just goes to show how writing can be therapeutic as well. It allowed you to distract yourself. It's just such a wonderful gift, I think, to be able to write. So, and it was so touching, the novel. You could certainly feel all that heartfelt grief in the novel, because DCS Cat had lost her husband. So it felt so real. Now, I know the book is about an AI called Locke, who I found absolutely fascinating, as I said, and I can't wait for the next book. But I actually found this to be a book which is much more about how to be human, which you've just mentioned. So when you wrote it, was that your intention to sort of draw the comparison of heart versus machine and sort of lean towards the heart?
Yeah, I've actually tried to be as neutral as possible, because I'm trying to, because when you think about it, lots of films and books about AI, whether it's about Terminator or other famous novels or films, there's always an assumption that to be human is to be best, and it's best to make the gutted instinct is stronger. And what I was trying to do was show that actually making a decision according to a hunch, particularly in the police force, a hunch could also be another person's prejudice or bias. And actually, there may be a case of having much more evidence-based, data-driven decisions, much more transparent decision-making, and that it's kind of quite egocentric of us humans to think that we're the pinnacle of development. I wanted to challenge our own thinking. So I try to sort of say it's that they've both got strengths. There are strengths in the machine thinking, strengths in the gut instinct, and they both have to kind of learn from each other, and try and leave it to the reader to sort of have their own sort of preference. But I'm trying to make it challenge myself as well. I'm a very instinctive person as well, so I'm trying to sort of keep challenging myself and ourselves. And also, when you start criticizing or scrutinizing how machines make decisions, because there are all sorts of flaws, it then makes you think about how we make decisions. So Malcolm Gladwell, who's read a brilliant book called Blink, which is, again, where partly the title riffs off. And he talks about how lots of humans will make decisions in a split second, in the blink of an eye. And some people describe it as a gut, but other people would say, actually, that's our brains processing information so fast, it's too fast for most humans to comprehend. So it's really the more you think about how AI makes decisions, the more you get into actually how do we as humans 8 decisions, and we don't understand that. So
No.
when we talk about whether AI it can ever be conscious, we still don't yet know what makes consciousness within humans. It reveals the mystery. So the quote at the beginning of the book, so the mystery, the question isn't whether a machine can think, it's whether a man can, because the mystery that surrounds a thinking machine already surrounds a thinking man. So it's a very long answer, but
no,
I
find it so interesting.
Yeah,
and you're absolutely right, because I studied a bit of neuroscience in my degree, and there's so much of the brain that we don't understand. Exactly. It's mad. You just thought, you'd think that with all our medicine and all our knowledge now, we would know so much more about the brain than we do, but we don't. But I think I'm right in saying, Jo, that you don't have a police background. Is that right?
No.
So I wondered how you did your research for the procedural side of the book. How did you get that perfect balance between sort of DCS Frank and at work and at home?
So I just drew on I'm not a police officer, and I deliberately didn't, at that point, I didn't speak to any of the police officers, because I just noticed to myself, I'm sort of a senior manager at work. And so I was trying to show, because a lot of books, they show strong women and it's just like they're all on it at work. And what you don't see is when they go home and they cry, or they're struggling, or they've got, as you did, teenage children who don't care that you've just done a board presentation or spoke to hundreds of people. They just say, where's dinner? I was just trying to show how that does mesh together. We may not see it normally on the screen or in novels, but that is how life is. And I can't believe it's that different in police work. If you're a police officer, you've still got to buy Christmas presents or worry about who's going to who's on Christmas Day or birthdays. All that stuff just must pile up on you. So it's just my own instinct disorder. It must be that. So I know about that from my experience. So I'll just play that through police work. And then Rebecca Bradley and other people read it for me really kindly and commented, but I just took it from my own approach, really, just thinking they're human too.
Had you watched a lot of kind of police shows and on TV and things, and that had given you, like, because I wouldn't, it's one of those things that you think, because I've watched a lot of series with police in, and you think how to write it, but then when it comes down to it, you're like, well, what do they do now? Well, how are they sitting? How are they arranged?
I just did it logically. So I've absorbed a lot, because I do read an awful lot of crime and watch crime. And then obviously I did desk-based research, but I just tried to follow a logical process. So if it was me, what questions would be in my brain? What would I try and do next? It was just trying to literally. So although I had a plan of the plot, as I wrote each chapter, I'd be thinking, sometimes I'd have a plan that thought something would happen in the next chapter. Then I'd be thinking, actually, if I was Kat, what would I do then? I wouldn't do that. I'd do this next. I'd want to speak to this person or do that. So I was just trying to think, if it was me, what would I do?
Well, she's absolutely brilliant character. She's flawed, like a lot of police characters in novels are, but she's flawed in kind of quite unusual ways. I think, as you say, you did make her incredibly human, with her grief, and all these aspects which serve to highlight her humanity, I think, against Aid, who is, he's not going to feel things like grief. He doesn't feel anything.
Kat would say it's an it. And I should say for your listeners, I have tried to make it
to me.
I know. But I tried to make it funny as well, because
it was funny.
And again,
it was funny. Yeah.
I was keen to show again that I do love female-led detective shows, but quite often they're really quite miserable. It's a middle-aged woman who looks really haggard. I mean, they look like I feel. They look really miserable, dragged down. So I was trying to show that, actually somebody was on Radio 4 this morning talking about Happy Valley.
Yeah.
Like how the character Sarah Lancaster plays, that she's somebody who's naturally quite a jolly, energetic woman, but has had a tragic life.
Yeah.
And then happens to be a policewoman. And I thought, God, that's exactly what I was trying to do with Kat. Somebody who's got a lot of energy, because even like I might have had a lot of things, as we all have by our age, a lot of stuff happens to us, she says politely, but you still carry on, you still have humour. And the clash between DCS Kat Frank and Locke, I was trying to show, because again, the best of shows like I keep much of the Terminator or Spock in Star Trek, they're quite humorous moments, aren't they?
Yes.
So that makes you flippant. I was trying to lighten up, so it's
Yeah,
not.
I think you got the balance perfectly.
Yeah.
I didn't in the first draft. This isn't another interview. So the first draft I did, because I did write it literally a few weeks after my husband's funeral. It was really miserable. So my agent said, it's really good, but I think you've written this for yourself. And if you want to write it for crime readers, you'll need to take out some of this or rearrange it. So it was more sort of more the domestic scenes sort of come later on, or that intersperse a bit more with the plot.
Yes. Well, you've got the balance totally right. There's that, ebb and flow throughout it, so you don't feel, there are moments of, absolute grief. It made me cry, but there's also very amusing bits in it as well. So yes, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And how far off do you think we are seeing aid lock in kind of police stations and working with the police?
So I've deliberately set it just a few years and a few unspecified years in the future. So it's sort of the future that's kind of within sight, but not quite here now. And if you look at most people who forecast the future, get it wrong. I mean, I'm trying to think how many years ago, 7 years ago today. No, not 7. 17 years ago today, the iPhone was invented. 2007. Is that right? I got my maths right.
I think that's right. Yeah, 2007.
That wasn't foresaw before. So sometimes science make these huge big jumps. So many of the elements that make up aid lock, as I say in the book, are here or either here or on the horizon. The one bit that we don't have is Locke's live conversational abilities. So it's not just an algorithm. It's not just training, it's not just mimicking being a human. It actually is capable of live conversation abilities. That's the bit that I think is not yet within the foreseeable future, but was necessary for the dramatic impact. But also what I was keen to do is we need to have the debate now about what it means for us and the world of work before it exists. If we don't have the conversation, by the time it's with us, it will be too late. Because we'll have machines that are cleverer and more powerful than we are, and we won't be able to control or direct them to purposes that benefit us.
Yes.
Yes, very true. Which brings us on to our topic for today, in fact, which is AI and writing. Should we be worried? So your book is coming out at a topical time for the publishing industry with the launch of AI writing tools such as ChatGPT, which Nikki and I have been chatting about already in our introduction. So can you tell us a bit about your research into AI? And what surprising things did you learn about it when you were doing your research?
Oh God, what a surprising thing. I think, as I said before, it's surprising more about how little we know about humans, to be honest, rather than AI. I think what I find the most useful is because a lot of it is very complicated. It seems complicated, it can be quite overwhelming. What I found the most helpful was to distinguish between what AI is, because there's no one definition of it. But Professor Stuart Russell, he's sort of my personal guru on this. And if you listen to his Reith lectures, 2021, really recommend them. And he says that actually AI is really just an entity or an agent which perceives a situation and responds according to the task that we have given it. And it's a spectrum. So you might have something simple like a thermostat that has an objective to control the temperature. So it will judge when it's too cold or too hot and switch it on or off. That has elements of machine intelligence and that's what we'd call it very narrow task-based AI. So it performs a simple task. And then there's general purpose AI, the other end of the spectrum, which is the sort of where you get the deep learning, the sort of the ability to do a range of complex tasks, the way that humans are and operate across many different functions. So I think distinction between, seeing it as a spectrum and distinguishing between narrow AI and general purpose AI is what I find really, really helpful. And I think what surprised me most was that people like Professor Stuart Russell and other experts, they're the ones, it's the scientists who are the most worried about the future of AI. They're the ones calling for public debate and saying that, as Turing said in 1936, he warned that it's not a question of when, of if AI will take, machines will take over. It's a question of when. If we create machines that are cleverer and more powerful than us, then it's only a matter of time. So we need to have that debate now. And I guess I was surprised that it's the experts and it's people like Professor Stuart Russell who are urging caution. and asking for frameworks and for debate and for regulation, because we can't just leave it to sort of roll itself out.
Yes, I think Lauren and I were kind of having a talk in our introduction about with the chat GPT, we asked it to come up with an introduction to a novel, and we got it to. Lauren read both versions out. She wrote one, and the AI wrote one, and we had to kind of guess. I had to guess, haven't read them, which one was which, and I could tell, partly because I know Lauren's writing very well, but I was surprised kind of how good it was. So I guess one of the things that I was going to ask you was how worried should authors be, do you think, for their jobs?
So again, I think it comes back to what you think the job of an author is. So if it's to produce, reasonably well-written text to a tight brief, so if that's your job, there's an article in the bookseller about academic publishing, which is probably more pragmatic. So the more systematic or protocol-based writing is, and I think that should be, because actually you can program it and it will learn through all the sort of training data it gets. It will learn that formula and be able to be quite confusing, but quite convincing. But creative work, I think, is where you come back to, where do humans add value? And if you ask this chat GPT, it will say itself that that's not what it does. It can't generate new ideas. It can draft, it can give you prompts, it can do systematic based writing. So I think, and again, it comes back to what is the role of humans and human authors. And people write and read stories to connect with each other. You want to know, like something like my book, Writing About DC Frank, that I'm writing about a widowed woman because I'm a widow. That gives it, people say it has authenticity. And you know yourself when you read something. There are some films that we watch that we know have been written to sort of colour by numbers. It's a formulaic thing, and they're good and they pass the time and it's fine, but you don't remember them. The ones that stay with you, the ones that you push to the hands of other people, so you must see this, you must watch that, are the ones that move you, because somebody's written something you thought, God, I thought that was just me, and this person's captured that thing, they found words or an image or a piece of music that's moved me, and you get the goosebumps. So I think from that point, we shouldn't worry, but I do think we shouldn't be complacent, because in all parts of work, we will have to think, and this is the opportunity, what is it where humans add value? What do we want from life? What does good work mean? And where can we perfect the art of living, as Keynes said, as opposed to just assuming we can just carry on, that they'll just do other things. Professor Ryan Calo from the University of Washington, who I met with on Friday virtually, he talks about, again, machines and robots doing all the jobs that are dirty, dull and dangerous. So I'm not sure if
when's it going to be able to wash up for me?
Exactly.
That's what I
want.
want.
I'm not sure if being an author counts as dirty, dull and dangerous, so we're probably okay for a bit. But that's what I think our opportunity to say, actually. It's quite exciting. We stop seeing it as a threat. Well, be cognizant of the risks, but actually say, what's the opportunity? What kind of life do we want for ourselves and our children? And how can we fundamentally change the paradigm, so that actually the work we value is the creative work, is the caring work, is the personal, the human work, and we get freed from all the dirty, dull and dangerous tasks that clutter up most people's days.
God, that's it. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Yes, I think Lauren and I were talking earlier about that Apple have just started hiring, or they're using AI to read audiobooks. So not the kind of generally, well, not so far the kind of new books that get published, but certainly, Backlist, they're starting to use AI for, which, and you can already see that. I think that there will be an impact, on the industry, and those people that are currently employed to read audiobooks. At the moment, they're still going to be employed because they're going to be reading the new ones. But if this takes off and Apple decide, actually, this is a lot cheaper, more efficient, nobody really notices, then that's a whole section of the industry that could potentially disappear.
But then that depends on the market, doesn't it? If that's what listeners want, I'm just thinking, so my son's upstairs now doing his revising his GDL exam. So if he's listening to a law textbook, he probably doesn't want an Oscar-winning actor. He's just consuming data,
Yeah.
and he wants it as quickly and as clearly as he can get that in his head. But if he's listening to, I don't know, one of his favorite books, Station 11, he doesn't want that read by a bot, you know.
Yeah.
And I think we all do. When something's really beautifully written and beautifully read, that's different. So I think again, there's a lot more nuance to this, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think I certainly agree with you, Jo, that I don't think readers want bot books. I think they want to have something else. And so I think if we're going to see bot books, the publishers would have to have a deep fake and create like author profiles and pretend they're real people, and that just becomes really murky, and then it will get out and they'll get in trouble, and they won't do it. I don't think we're too far.
It'll be a fake. Some of this will be fake. Some of it will really take off, but some things like that, I just think they're like so there'll be a little bit of, I don't know, I'm forecasting that, but there'll be a little bump in people will be interested in these things, and we'll get lots of bots who, the first novel written by AI, and there'll be some interest. But then I think it is about that human connection.
I think that's why a lot of, I mean, like authors go on panels, and people want to hear about your publishing journey and what you kind of overcame to get here, and they kind of, they bond with you as a person, and I think that's going to be very difficult to do
that's a really good example.
AI.
That's a really good example. I've just started going to book festivals the past year or so, and that's what I've been struck by, how many not just readers but writers go, and they want to hear from each other and learn from each other and connect. And it just reminds me of when my children were young. Do you remember when you first had play dates and they're 4 or 5, and the first thing they want to do is go and visit the other person's bedroom. Let me see how you live. Who are you? They get very excited about that.
I'm never going to see Harrogate the same way again now. I'm always going to see it as a giant play date. It's so fascinating. But I think what you've hit upon is not the perils, but actually the opportunities, which I think is really important. I mean, I know a lot of people who don't have Alexas in their house, or they don't have Alexas in their bedrooms. They don't like their kids to be near Alexa. And I just absolutely love Alexa so much. And my dad was disabled, and he couldn't turn on the lights by himself, and he had loads of problems. And Alexa for him created a whole opportunity for him to listen to the radio, to watch things, to turn lights on and off without having to move, which was really fantastic. So I think
really good example. BBC Sounds is another example of that, isn't it? That, if it'd be like my dad at 83, he's just can't work an iPhone, but now you can say BBC Sounds, get the program that you want. You don't have to teach somebody. You've got that instant access. So the debate needs to be on how can we use the genius to improve access to the quality of services. What do we need to? So yes, it may take away other jobs, as the industrial revolution, the agricultural revolution, all these revolutions do. So how can we anticipate that and give people the training, the skills for the new jobs that they will generate? And the opportunities for the time. So not to be complacent, because actually in my work I'm very skeptical about that, because I think too much is claimed for AI as a magic bullet, that it will magic away all the cost problems, all the time problems. I'm very skeptical in some aspects, but I do wish we could reframe the debate around some of the opportunities that we can take if we act with strategic intent to bring that future close. It won't happen by itself as part of an unregulated market. That's the issue, my personal view.
So it's you're clearly incredibly knowledgeable about this, and it's been so fascinating talking to you. Outside of the publishing industry, what do you think could be the next steps for AI sort of in our lives?
Oh gosh, outside publishing. Well, it's already here. I mean, I think when you actually really think about how much it's part of, it's in our phones, it's in our computers, it's in our heating systems, our transport. So I don't think we quite realise how much is already threaded throughout almost every aspect of our life. And even this morning I was listening, because I don't sleep very well, 5:30 Farming Today, which is actually a really good program. They were talking about how machines will soon be picking and our fruit and vegetables, and already, I didn't realise this, but AI machines are already really quite a big part of the farming industry.
Oh, wow.
And there we have a labour supply problem. but it will affect their industry. But if they can just get it a bit more specific and nuanced around being able to actually pick and select fruit and veg, and they think that will happen. Initially, the way they described it was that within a generation, which I thought was quite a nice time frame, because people always say within 5 years or 10 years. And people have claimed all sorts of things since the late 1990s, but definitely within a generation, I think it will transform probably every industry. But it's already with us. It's a bit like that boiling frog syndrome or a boiling lobster.
Yes.
So we need to be aware that it's happening now. It's not like when does it happen?
Yes.
It will happen. And again, to quote Professor Stuart Russell, again, he would say the issue isn't when it will happen. It'll be what do we do when it does?
Yeah.
Then. That's where we need to be debating, because everyone always debates about, and they argue, is it 5 years, it's 10 years, with a big impact or a medium impact? And Stuart Russell cheering the others go, it will happen. The issue is when, so we just again switch our brains to the debate.
Sometimes when we have conversations like this, I just want to go and live on a farm far away in the middle of nowhere with no technology.
The robots will get you there as well. They're going to be picking that fruit, Lauren.
They won't let you go, Lauren. No. You're not getting on that plane. Yeah. No. Yes.
But it's interesting, isn't it? But again, but the generational difference, that people born now, they will know no different. So again, the generational differences between people like our generation who grew up without mobile phones. So when I had my first child in 2000, you had to take change into the hospital to ring your family and friends on the phone to tell them you'd given birth. I mean, that seems a world away now, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, not having a mobile, both I had my first daughter in 2005, and they have no concept of what it was like to have to to not have a phone, to not be in touch with people all the time constantly. And the fact that you'd kind of go and meet somebody in town and you'd have to have a pre-arranged place, because if you weren't there when you said you would,
that was it.
Couldn't get hold of them. And that's just like, whoa, it's
And yet they have all these phones, and this is why I think, again, somebody cleverer than me said, one of the most important words in the English language is "and," because we always predicted that they would therefore read all their books on Kindle, and yet actually this generation really value paper-based books. Mine, they've got Spotify and God knows what is their music on, but they love vinyl. Spend a fortune on, unfortunately, worshipping these and playing on the little
I had to get all my old records out of the loft actually for my eldest, because they're obsessed with vinyl. It's the most bizarre thing.
I think that humans are fascinating. It's not going to be very binary, and it'll be machine, the machines will wipe away everything. People again will have choices and opportunities and work at actually what we really matters to us. And different people have different answers to that question, different points in time. The issue will be about equity. We should say that obviously I'm very privileged, so we'll have access to lots of things, and the risk is unless again we act with strategic intent, we will build and reinforce inequities and prejudices into these systems that will have a very divided society. So again,
yes, that's a really good point.
So your hardback, which I think there's a copy people can see there, so that's out on the 19th, out in 7 days, and the paperback is out on the 17th of August, I think. So do you have any ideas about when we're going to be able to get our hands on the next lot and DCS Cap Frank book?
I've just finished a draft of book 2, which I'm going to send to my editor and agent on Monday, just in a few days from when this is broadcast, which I'm really excited about. I can't wait. It's quite funny. I'm just realizing that as you write, there's kind of time lag. So everyone's just raising that book 1. I'm going, oh no, but you need to hurry up and read book 2. Never mind.
Yes. And how have you found writing book 2 compared to writing book 1?
Well, luckily, I wrote that more or less before this came. It's starting to come out now, but so before I'd written a really a full draft last Christmas,
right?
So before everyone started to talk about this, which I'm really glad TM Logan said to me, try and write your second book before your first one comes out, because it's really distracting. And I thought then he meant because if you get bad reviews, it will put you off. And actually, this sounds really arrogant. It's actually the good reviews that have put me off. I think, oh my God,
it's the pressure to succeed again, isn't
they
it?
say it's clever. I think, what do you mean it's clever? Which bit is clever? Or it's funny, or it's sad. I think, oh God, is this one? Is this one?
I feel like that right now, actually.
Yeah.
So I found
it was quite easy.
One of those, you know, you're kind of stuffed if you do and stuffed if you don't, kind of, isn't it? It's yes. Yeah. So that was good advice from him, I think. Yeah, definitely.
And I should add, my book comes out in January, just so your listeners know, I've been writing for 13 years, and this is my first UK crime debut. So, you know, I've written
so fantastic.
maybe
Congratulations.
5 books before. So if it sounds like, oh, I'm just knocking them out just really easy, because I've had a lot of practice writing books that never go
it just goes to show you don't give up. That's such a key element, isn't it? You've got to keep fighting.
Yeah, it's a form of madness, isn't it, though? You just think, why? You know, I did several times try to give up. You know, I said, oh, and eventually when I wrote this book, I should say as well that I'd given up trying to get published. I did write it for myself, as I said, as a distraction, and I didn't even know if I'd sent it to my agent when I wrote it. I just thought, I need to write this just for me. And it was the irony is I gave it trying to get published, and that's when I got published. So just your listener, there were probably lots. I used to listen to podcasts all the time. I find them I still do. I find them very inspiring. So
me too.
Do keep writing, not just to get published, but I think for yourself. I think it's really helpful. I don't know how people might cope, to be honest.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, completely agree. We ask all our guests this. Have you got any recommendations about things that you've read recently and loved?
Oh God, so many. I read all the time. I'm just like, oh, you've got to pull up a chair. Actually, the last one I wrote was because I saw a tweet by you, Nikki. The last one I really loved was Notes on an Execution.
Oh yes, love that.
Oh, that was stunning. I mean, really, quite a dark book, isn't it?
Yeah.
So lots of issues that you know. So I have to quite choose about what sort of issues I read about when, depending on my mood. But yeah, it's so beautiful. Amazing writing.
Amazing writing. Yeah.
Annoyingly amazing.
Yeah.
But I would recommend that one to anybody. My book's out on the 19th, and there's a great book by CJ Tudor called The Drift, also out of the same day. It's an amazing sort of how to describe it, thriller / horror look or white ride of a novel, isn't it?
She knows how to bring the chills, doesn't she?
She does. Yeah.
And totally. Also on the same day, there's another debut author from the Midlands called Natalie Marlowe, who's written a book called Needless Alley, which is set in 1930s Birmingham. So if you like Peaky Blinders, film noir, all that kind of stuff, it's a beautiful cover as well.
That's really great.
Great recommendation. Yeah.
What about you, Nikki?
Well, I have just read, I've read this one. It's called In Memoriam by Alice Wynne, and it's not a thriller. I normally read thrillers, but this was, oh my goodness, I read it right at the end of last year, and it's absolutely incredible. It's a story about World War I, 2 men who are in love with each other, kind of, but throughout set in World War I, and it just felt like you were in the trenches with them. It's absolutely incredible. It made me cry loads, and it's one of those books that you just keep thinking about. I can still think about it. 3 weeks later, it stayed with me. I just thought it was absolutely fabulous. So
is it already out now, Nikki? Is that out or?
No, it's proof. It's out in March, 7th of March. That one, 7th of March. Yes. And then the other one that I read, which I really enjoyed, thriller-wise, was Trevor Wood's new one, which is called You Can Run. And yeah, I mean, I've loved Trevor's books, and he wrote a trilogy about a homeless man, Jimmy, and kind of from there. But this is a standalone. But it's similar kind of cast of characters. It's not about a homeless man. It's about a girl called Ruby, a teenager, and kind of something happens in her village, and it's kind of, I guess, a lockdown situation, if you like, and she has to escape. And it's well written, and it's got Trevor's fantastic sense of humor in it, and really fantastic characters, some very likable and some not so likable with the baddies, but Really like
I
that.
read the blurb today of that, actually. I thought it sounded so good. So I'm looking forward to reading that
Yes.
one day.
How about you, Lauren? What have you read?
I've not been doing much reading, it's been a bit busy. But I read over Christmas The Fall. This is just the proof cover. So it's The Fall by Louise Jensen.
Oh, yes, heard of that, yeah.
So the cover says, she promised not to tell, they made sure she couldn't. And it's a really great story. It's about these adult twin sisters who are just really, really close, and they both happen to have had children at the same time, 2 girls who are also really close and who are teenagers, and you've got this really close-knit family, but then something happens with the teenagers and it creates this huge divide down the middle of the family, and you realize where your allegiances lie, and there's a lot of whose side are you on and who do you believe situations. So it's a really great unraveling of a family thriller, so one to look out for, and that is out in April, so one to look out for with Louise.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's it. But sadly, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much, Jo, for joining us on In Suspense.
Thank you.
It's been really interesting listening to you talk, and I'm so blown away by how smart you are and how much just information you've got in your head. I just come away feeling.
Sorry, I did warn you. I'll just babble.
No, it's so
not at all.
It's so impressive, and I just think this has been such a really fascinating podcast, and I'm sure everyone will agree as well. So thank you very much for all your wisdom and your honesty, and sharing so much of yourself with us.
No, thank you for having me. That was great. Thank you.
And it does feel like our jobs are perhaps safe for a few years at least. So that's really good.
Yes, thank you ever so much, Jo. That was absolutely fascinating. So for our listeners and readers, In the Blink of an Eye is out in hardback and ebook on the 19th of January. And it's a phenomenal read on so many different levels. So do check it out. And on our next show, Leslie Cara and I will be chatting to the one and only Louise Candlish, which I'm very excited about.
Is that The Only Suspect?
Yes,
that's great. Oh, I should have read that. That's brilliant, actually, as well.
Yes. So very excited about that. And meanwhile, Lauren and I are going to be talking to Zoe Lee. We've got the first mini-sode, and Zoe is a social media consultant for authors. She's absolutely fantastic at that. So we're going to be chatting to her.
Yes,
so
exciting.
Yes,
those mini-sodes are going to be really interesting. I think lots of people are going to be asking about TikTok and Instagram and what we can all do a bit more.
You nailed TikTok though, Lauren. I saw your video.
I went viral this week. I didn't say I should have said that at the start. So yeah, I went viral at 600,000 views.
Oh, really?
And it was the most ridiculous video, but it all went out to people who weren't readers, so it's completely pointless. And then TikTok just pushed all my videos then out, so I did a review of your book, Jo, that got like 20,000 views.
Yeah.
And then I said yesterday, I've died. I had like 24 views yesterday of a video, so obviously I was being pushed out, and then I've now not been. So,
wow, that's amazing. Well done.
I'm pleased it stopped, actually, because I was feeling like a lot of pressure to kind of like keep it going, and I'm just glad to be back to normal again with my 200 views per video.
Yes, we were WhatsApping. It was just kind of stuff was like, oh my goodness, Lauren, you've got 500, and then it was like, oh my goodness, you got 5,000.
I know, it was crazy.
Oh my goodness, it just went completely mental. It was
I don't think it made a jot of difference.
Will be, Zoe's going to be able to tell us a bit more about things like that when we chat to her on our mini-sodes. And if you've enjoyed this episode, either listening or watching, please do like and subscribe to our YouTube channel or our podcast. We've got a link on social media now. It's like a little Linktree link, and it lists kind of all the ways that you can watch and listen to us, which also helps other listeners find us. So, yes. I think that's
it. And that just leaves me with the final task of saying goodbye from Jo. Goodbye, Jo.
Bye.
And that's goodbye from us. So goodbye from Nikki and goodbye from me. Bye-bye. Bye.